Welcome to Decoding Multifamily, a video podcast that explores different aspects of multifamily operations and takes a deep dive into the important topics that affect the apartment industry. Watch as co-hosts Suzanne Hobson and Paul Marks engage with multifamily thought leaders, rising multifamily superstars, and apartment industry icons. Decoding is defined as the process of extracting meaningful and useful information. So watch closely as we begin Decoding Multifamily.
Welcome to Decoding Multifamily, powered by the Multifamily Media Network. The Multifamily Media Network is a free media platform on a mission to inspire the next generation of multifamily leaders. With over a dozen podcasts from a roster of hosts who are not only multifamily experts, but industry icons, we bring you the latest insights, trends, and success stories from the multifamily world. Stay informed about each unique podcast and catch up on the latest episodes by visiting multifamilymedianetwork.com. Plus, don't miss out on our educational and inspiring multifamily blogs. Tune in, get inspired, and transform your multifamily journey with us. So I want to introduce again my fantastic co-host, Suzanne Hobson of Decoding Multifamily. And Suzanne, we have a great guest who I've had the opportunity to interview before, but we've got some new questions and want to find out what's going on with him currently. So I'll introduce our guest.
Onboarding and Enablement at RealPage, and you have over 25 years of experience in business leadership and team culture development. And it appears that you've dedicated a significant portion of your career to the multifamily real estate industry. That's why you're here. And we can't wait to dive in even more as to how you started your journey. That's next. In 2006 or since then, you've worked in various roles within on-property office teams, ultimately developing a book that we will talk about in just a few moments. And you're also an accomplished author, speaker, and consultant. So very, very happy to have you on our show today, Jason, and we can't wait to start decoding you.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And Paul, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So I jumped into the multifamily industry, like you said, back in 2006, I think it was. And it was really like most people that I've talked to fell into multifamily. At the time, I was pursuing a stage acting career in the city of Chicago. I had left town for the summer to do a summer stock gig in Colorado. And one of the people that I worked with said that her day job was managing properties. I said, I don't know what that is. And so she said, well, basically apartments. It's in downtown Chicago. I run the property and I'm looking for a leasing agent. So if you need a day job, let me know. And I said, I don't know what a leasing agent is. She said, oh, well, it's like being an actor. You kind of memorize a script and you show people around and you try to get them to live there. And I said, great, I'll dress up in my suit and memorize my route. And so I had, maybe a dozen performances a day that were for very small audiences, 1 to 5 people. And we rented some apartments. That's how it started. And, around that time, shortly after that, my wife and I found out we were going to have twins.
Oh, wow.
And so there was a very big pivot in my life to focus on things like insurance and long-term financial security. And so at the time, I was leasing up a brand new property in Streeterville in Chicago. It's funny, they named it The Streeter, which is funny because multifamily is not super creative with names.
No.
Right? I just want to call that out. It's like The Street, or it has Valley or Mesquite Ridge, like in the book. So I said, okay, so this is going to be what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue leasing. I was making decent money for the age that I was, where I was in my life. And my wife was originally from Texas. And so at some point she said, hey, I've been stuck in the house with twins for an entire Chicago winter. I don't want to live here anymore. So I went, okay. So we moved to Texas, and I applied for a leasing agent job at a lease up in Fort Worth, and I got the job. So I moved down to Texas and very quickly was identified as someone who they wanted to run through the training system of becoming a manager. So I moved from leasing to assistant manager, and then I was a resident coordinator, resident move-in coordinator back in the days when we were doing the paper leases. I would sit down and review every single lease with every single move-in, make sure the paperwork was ready, and then spent the bulk of my career as a property manager. Started out with 289 units, moved up to 305, got a second phase at 500, ended up at 800. Spent some time as a regional director of learning and development, and then I moved over to the vendor side. So I've worn a lot of hats throughout my multifamily career.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Because I've interviewed a lot of people over the years that and asked what's your origin story in multifamily. You're the first one that ever was an actor.
Huh.
So when you were doing these little mini performances, my question, and this is really kind of off topic, but
Sure.
at the end of the performance, did you take a bow? I
I didn't take a bow, but I did, hear applause in my head. So
That's good.
And
All right.
everyone left standing up, so I figured those were standing ovations. So,
okay, good. That's great.
Quick and good. Yeah, a legend in your own right, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that works. What a neat story. And yes, thinking about that journey, it really has taken some twists and turns. And I think that's what has really intrigued me personally about digging into you. Not only just because we have mutual connections and they speak so highly of you and the work that you do, but also because it was quite a journey and it's really different from a lot of the people that we talk to, which I think is also inspiring about just the breadth that you can get from being associated with our industry. So along those lines, and in really talking about the work that you love to do that you think has the most impact, just curious, like what do you think you're doing today or have recently done that has made a big impact with others?
Wow, that's a great question. For me, I'm like a self-proclaimed leadership junkie, and I read all the books and watch all the podcasts and all the things. So I've done a little bit of like self-reflection on why it is I get out of bed every morning. And one of my most recent articulations is around, getting up every day to help people be the best at whatever it is they want to do. And so that they can live their best life. And so that's really, I try to do it every day in small doses. Today, I just had a one-on-one with one of my directs, and I could sense that business was not on the menu today to be discussed. So we sat and we talked about things that were off topic. And that allowed me to deepen that relationship. That allowed me to show him that I'm a safe place to talk with, that I'm not all about business. And so I can't pick something specific that's a like large impact, but every day I look for opportunities, every hour, every conversation. How do I leave this conversation better than I found it? And so I'm a micro impactor.
Which ends up being, yes, a
Yes, there's
macro
accumulation.
impactor,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that's really interesting. Sometimes when we ask people those questions, it is some pivotal moment in their career or something, major. But when you talk about the discipline really of listening and being curious and just leaning into people every day with the purpose of leaving them better, that's a really great, just daily way of living.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
I find it to be rewarding. It can be really challenging, right? Because, we all go through our own trials and tribulations. We all have our down days, but as a leader, I try to show up as honest as I can too. So if I'm having one of those days that maybe I'm not going to be the best partner, I'll put it out there. Hey, I'm having a day today, just to let you know. So if something seems off, it's not you, it's not anything about work. We can talk about it if you want, kind of.
Yeah, and to that, I think that you're really giving us some nuggets on great leadership. And these are things that it's really, you're just bringing it to the conscious mind, right? When you're thinking about what you do before you do it, and some of us are moving so fast, it seems like we skip those steps.
Well,
And this
and
isn't, and
Suzanne,
this
it's
is off
no
script too.
one ever like, what's that?
Yeah, this is off script too. I'm really fascinated by what you're talking about. So
Oh, I
yeah,
was talking with uh somebody about this, and I was saying that, oh, now I'm stuck on who I was talking to. But anyway, showing up and being vulnerable is different than showing up and complaining, right? If you let people know where you're at, it's not complaining as much as it is level setting. And so I try to walk that line of not griping, complaining, being negative, but also being honest and open.
yeah. Well, there's been a lot of conversation as of late, especially about vulnerable leadership and how that, is really, it's not the new thing. It's probably the wisest thing, but tell me a little bit about how, you're really focusing in on that a little bit more. I know you just talked about being vulnerable. When you talk to other people about that as a leadership skill, what do you tell them?
Listen more than you talk, ask questions, acknowledge feelings, acknowledge, I am a big camera on kind of guy. I work in a mostly virtual environment. So I can tell, and I usually call out when I see things shift. So if I'm talking about a certain project or initiative or maybe a move that's been made within the company, and I see someone's demeanor shift, I'll call it out in a way that I'll say, I noticed that you had a reaction to that. Tell me what you're thinking. Instead of assuming, right? Some people will come at it and say, it looks like that upset you. And that kind of maybe puts people in a defensive position, but calling them out in a way saying, I saw you had a strong reaction to that. I saw that clicked something in your mind. Tell me what you're thinking. And then allowing them to express themselves in a way that's not through my lens, but through their own.
Wise words here. Really, really appreciate that. Do you find that the virtual world, has it been challenging for you to be able to read people better? Like just what you're talking about. Has it been harder or do you find it to be easier? Because I've
Um,
heard both.
it's, I don't, I think at first it was a little challenging, but I think I adapted to it pretty quickly. I'll tell you where it gets challenging is going back to in person. So, like, I'm usually a really social person. I can engage in conversation and, I can talk about the weather with the best of them, or we can go deep and talk about something meaningful. Like, either way, totally flexible. But now that I've been virtual for so long, I do find myself having to warm up in an in-person environment. I mean, even last night I went to a happy hour with some coworkers, and it took me a couple of minutes to get back in gear of what it's like to be in the room with human beings. And so
Yes.
I
Yeah.
so there's that side of it too. So I think you adapt to what your environment is. So that's where I'm at present.
Yeah. Well, I've heard a lot on either side of, people being able to read people better. They just seem to be more visible when it's one on one and you're not in a room where some of that electricity or, it can be diluted by the amount of people that are in the room. To the opposite of that, where people are just, really longing and want to get in person more and more and more now that we are, venturing out of that deep, dark couple of years we were in, which forced us all to be that way. So interesting. Um, yeah. So I'd love to get into something else that you do that you ventured into. We mentioned it very quickly at the beginning in your intro, but you have written a book.
I have. I've
You
written a
are
book,
an
Journey
author.
to a Rainforest Team Culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you did that and, sort of what urged you to do that. I'd love to hear like that. I'm sure listeners
Yeah.
would too.
Yeah. Like I said earlier about kind of being that leadership, just self-proclaimed leadership junkie. When I was a property manager, I actually went through kind of some of the journey that the main character Eliza in the book went through. Like I thought if I showed up and everyone followed the rules and we stuck to policy and the files were perfect, like we were totally winning. And I had this moment early in my career where I saw things as very black and white. And I had a leasing agent who came to me and said, "Hey, Jason, I'd love to take off a Saturday. I think we were closed on Sundays. I want to take off a Saturday." I said, "Sure, you can definitely have PTO. You can definitely use that." She said, "Well, I'd like to switch my schedule so that I can take that off, because I don't want to burn a PTO day. We only get 2 weeks." And so I said, "Well, here's the thing. I got to work Monday through Friday. If I wanted to like take a day off, I can't just put myself on shift on a Saturday. So we're just going to have to do PTO." Well, that didn't work out too well. It was very like, stuck in the mud. After that point, I had a great conversation with my regional at the time who said, "Jason, you've got to find the gray in the world and you've got to live in that gray. When you live in the black or the white, you're not going to get very far and you're not going to make very many friends and you're not going to create a lot of loyalty. So you've got to live in the gray." And that was a big early lesson in my leadership. And so after that, I really started to do some perspective taking on the people that I worked with and put them first rather than the process manual.
So how did you actually get into the idea of writing it down and then publishing it? Like that's a whole different step from getting a lesson, learning it, maybe applying it. How was that connected to you?
So like fast forward 8 years from that moment, and I was in a director of learning and development position at the PMC I was working for, and I was teaching leadership classes. I was facilitating Ken Blanchard's 1 Minute Manager and some 5 dysfunctions of a team, things of that nature. And I had a leader at the time who checked all the leadership boxes, had one-on-ones, did the goal setting, all the things. But we had someone on our team who was a little bit toxic. And when a group of us went to that manager and said, "Hey, this person is becoming like a problem within the culture," they said, "Well, that person is a really high producer. They do quick, fast work. That's hard to replace. We're just going to have to find a way to deal with that." I realized that all the lessons that I was teaching about leadership were more individual skills than they were an all-encompassing framework on how to build and sustain a healthy team culture. So then I started to dig in on what's the difference between employee satisfaction and engagement? How does one influence the other? And what I realized is in all the podcasts, all the books that I did, the leadership training that I was facilitating, nobody gives you the toolbox. No one gives you the framework. They give you the hammer and the saw and they're like, "Go build a house," but you don't get a blueprint. And so what I saw was a gap in leadership content that doesn't allow you to have a holistic framework on what it means to build a team culture. So that's where I came up with the idea, where I came up with the book. And one of my proudest moments is you can take any of those individualized skill manager sessions and fit them into the framework of the book. It's not contradictory to any kind of goal setting, difficult conversation, training that you get as a manager. It slots right in there to help you drive one of the pillars outlined in the book. So I saw a gap and I decided I need to share this. And it was something that I was doing instinctively throughout my multifamily manager career. I was shaping an ecosystem at work. And so when I sat down and really started to dissect it and figure it out, it all just kind of came together in one nice cohesive package.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also think you are an example of all the other people who said, "We just need to write a book about this stuff," right? We just
Yes.
need to do a sitcom on this. That was another one, which you would be great for, Jason, with your acting background, right?
Oh, it still might happen. So let's discount that.
No, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had. I'm sure you've had the same. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think is, I know the pillars are all, important, but what do you think, what sticks out the most to you as maybe where people need the most work? Or would you say it's pretty much evened out?
Honestly, the most work needs to be in understanding how the differences between satisfaction and engagement and how one influences the other. I hear things like happy hours called engagement events. And they're not engagement events. They don't drive employee engagement. They make your employee happy for one night. It's around relationship building. I hear people calling things engagement when it's actually satisfaction and vice versa. And so understanding those two and the framework around it, for me, was one of the keys to success. Understanding that a pizza party is not going to drive someone to work harder, but it lays the foundation for you to then drive autonomy and innovation and things that will actually improve your business and get them more invested in your company.
Neat. So, but both of those are necessary. I know there's been a lot of also conversation around the pizza party. I'm just going to say it, the pizza party. There's photos online. People are talking about it.
Yeah.
But you're saying it lays a foundation. I think that's a great way of looking at it. It's not that we ditch it and do just one thing, but it's more of a path and a journey with your individual people. I love that. That's awesome. We often talk about the right things to do, and because it's positive, right? If you're telling people the right things to do to be a great leader, or it does give a great, I don't know, mindset, I guess, to approaching your leadership and improving on it. If you were going to tell some of our up and comings, because this is what the show is really all about, like how to learn from the icons so that you don't make the same mistakes, or if you're in that mistake, how to get out of it. What would you tell a young aspiring leader to really focus on early in their career as it relates to leadership?
Yeah. One, I would focus on understanding your employees on a professional level and a personal level. What is it that drives them? How do they measure their own success? What are things that they enjoy? Why are they here? And where do they want to go? And if they don't know where they want to go, even on a smaller level, what skills do they enjoy? Right? I remember the days where we weren't allowed to be on social media in the leasing office because it was wasting time. And then all of a sudden it became part of our job to be on social media for the property. So these little things open up a lot of opportunity. So if you understand that, you've got Paul on your team, and Paul's like, I don't want to do this job forever, but I do enjoy these parts of the job. How can I continue to feed Paul those parts of the job, get him developed? Is there another role in the company that he can look towards to develop towards? So just that education about the people you work with day to day, for me, is a foundational element.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we don't take that time in the beginning. It still happens today where people are shoved into the job, and some of those foundational work or that it doesn't happen. And I know this has happened to me where I've worked with people for years who don't know the name of my children or the name of my crazy dog. Some of those things that are really important to me,
Yeah.
They never bothered to really ask me about. And so,
Yeah.
I know just from the receiving end of that, how that makes you feel less connected, really, Jason.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If I can,
oh, go ahead, Paul.
if I just wanted to say that the leadership style that you've been talking about, Jason, and living in the gray and all of those things, it reminds me of somebody who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, not in the industry at all, but I would see him at different events where we had kids doing the same things. And every time he would come up to me, he would reach out to shake my hand, put his hand on my shoulder, and he would say, "How can I help you today? What can I do for you today?" That's the way he greeted me. He greeted everyone that way. And I never took him up on that. I didn't have anything I specifically needed his help for, but had I done it, I'm sure he would have gone out of his way to try and help me. And I'm sure when you train yourself to reach out and ask someone how you can help them first, it creates a different perspective on that relationship that you have with them, especially if you're working with them.
Yeah, 100%. And Paul, what that person did well, even beyond the question of what I can do for you, is come up, make some sort of like socially appropriate physical contact with a handshake, make eye contact, use your name. These are all like super small things, but when you do that on a consistent basis, it really helps in making that genuine connection with people. And that's really, at the end of the day, what leadership, the foundation of leadership is about, is
Right.
making connections in order to get work done and accomplish goals. Like, you can't do that on your own as a leader. You have to accomplish goals through other people and their work and what they do.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And Suzanne, we've got about 10 or 11 minutes left.
Great. Thank you, Paul. That's a great question. One of the other questions I'm curious about is, in this, I've heard this conversation as well, people that are maybe a little lower on the rung in the company, or just starting out in a lower level position, feel like they don't have any impact on the culture. And oftentimes you'll hear those people maybe complain about leadership or about the culture, and they don't feel like they have any control over what's happening. How can people who seemingly think they can't make an impact, what would you recommend that they do to really influence the culture in a positive way?
Absolutely. Well, I'd say if they don't believe that they can, the first thing we need to do is change the mindset. You don't need to have the authority of a leadership role to have influence or to be a quote unquote leader within your organization. Every company that I've been in as an individual contributor, I walked in with the mindset of, I'm here to collect a paycheck, and in return, I'm going to do this, give this company everything I've got to help them innovate, to grow. Every person I meet, I'm going to help them innovate and grow. How can I make their lives better? How can I make them more interesting or fun, or whatever the moment would be? So I would say, if you look at yourself, you bring something to the table, and that something is valuable to something else. Everybody has something of value. Identify that for yourself, whether that's your positive attitude, whether that's your ability to do, program computers, your ability to fix machinery, whatever your thing is, do it, and do it to the best of your ability. At the same time, let people know what you're doing. When you get the opportunity to connect, share with them what you're doing, ask them what they're accomplishing. And that's where you start to make connections, and you start to learn, oh, Suzanne, she's good at this. So if I have a question about this, I've made that connection, I can go with her. And then you, Suzanne, would say, well, I talked with Jason about this, and he told me this is his area of expertise, so I'm definitely going to connect with him. Then you start adding value. You become known as that person who does that certain thing, or you're always the positive one, or you're the best with customers, or et cetera, et cetera. And then you start to become more valuable to the company, your coworkers, your leadership, and it snowballs from there. Yeah. Yeah.
It has really been focusing on
I like how you start this question. The world in general. Okay.
yeah, in general. Well, again,
Uh-huh.
I hear it in different sectors of business and in life. Some of
Yeah.
our great leaders are talking about it right now, and it's really influencing the culture in a positive way. It's the same thing. What are you sensing out there? And we'll just take, the United States as an example, but what are you sensing right now? We're coming up on politics. You don't have to tell me what your political connotation is, but it's putting something in the air for everybody. What are you sensing about how that's impacting business in general? Do you think it is, or
It can, because it stokes uncertainty. And when people don't feel safe,
mm,
they are less likely to, I was going to say spend money, but heck, even leave the house. They close ranks, they interact less, They go to sources that confirm what they already believe, and it kind of becomes this vicious cycle. And I will say, and this is not like a one side or the other politics, I do think there's something that's impacting us more than like a specific political party or agenda or candidate. And that's this general assumption that we know what it's like for someone else to live their life. We don't, but we look at different groups and we say, you're wrong because in my experience, or I don't believe you because in my experience, I don't know what it's like to be anybody but me. And so if you go into conversations or ideas or concepts and say, you have a different lived experience than I do, I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to be tolerant of why you think that. I'm going to ask additional questions about where you came up with that idea. And then you start to have a dialogue. But we're really in a very assumptive society right now. And you know what they say when you assume things.
Yes. Yes. And that does apply in our day-to-day world of work and home life.
Yeah.
And I think again, that's a great mindset. You've said that quite a few times about how to not only, words matter. I hear that all the time too. And when you're approaching or engaging another person, how to do that with more grace. And it sounds like just openness. It also brought it into my mind right away. I thought you were going to say we're living in a world of social media and none of it is real. That's where my mind went. And none of it's real. It's like not, but I know it is like to a certain extent, but there's a lot of noise. And social media plays a huge part in all of our lives now. Just not the kids or whatever. We're on LinkedIn, we're on all the channels. It's a lot of noise. How do you think that affects culture?
I think it depends on how you use it. So, in general, I understand where the numbers are going up in depression, like depression among teens, and suicide rates and bullying. Like there's a very dark and negative side to social media. Not discounting that at all. But there's also a positive side. And I think me being able to talk to both of you is an indication of that. LinkedIn, for me, has been a tremendous platform to meet people that I never, ever would have met outside of maybe a conference and a passing conversation of, hey, Suzanne, Paul, this is Jason, vice versa, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
social media allows us to tell others what we think, how we process, what we believe in, and you can use that for good or you can use that for bad. And it's all about what you choose how you choose to use it that really defines what's going to be the outcome.
Yeah, I like that. It's our choice, really. And that, again, lends to some control over the destiny, which I know.
Yeah. Now, I will say there are extraordinarily addictive parts of social media I'm sure, and both of you are avid posters. I'm sure there is that time where you post and then you go back an hour later and you're like, only one person has liked my post. And you have that moment of like, nobody likes me. Why am I doing this? I spent an hour writing that and no one cares, right? So there are those elements of social media that are naturally there. But if you can check yourself as an adult and say, my purpose is to spread knowledge or joy or help people. And if one person liked that, that means I reached one person and I can celebrate that, right?
Exactly. I think that has also been something people have been talking about, just what's appropriate to post here, what's appropriate to post there. And I kept coming back to the same thing, which is if one person heard that and it resonated and made a difference, then it was a good post.
Yeah.
Suzanne,
Don't worry about it.
we've got time for one more question.
Oh, gosh. You've given us so much stuff today. This is like so much fun.
We're going to need a part 2. We're not.
I
Yes.
know.
We haven't even gotten started yet.
Yeah, I know. There's just so much more to talk about. So, yes, what are you up to next? Like, what's got you going to the next thing?
Okay, so I'm super excited about this. I'm taking the framework in Journey to a Rainforest Team Culture, and I'm developing an instructor-led training on those principles. And so around August, September, I'm going to be looking for pilot groups to go through this material for the first time, to provide feedback, so that we can develop this. Because ultimately, I would like the book is written in a way, right, where it has call to action sections at the end. You can go in and you can self-reflect. But this course is going to be an opportunity for people to sit down, go through each pillar, really apply it to their current management style or where they want to get in their management career, and understand on a deeper level how to build this framework. And so, yeah, if there's anybody out there listening, whether you're a multifamily or not, and you're looking to be a part of the pilot group, shoot me an email, go to my website, send me a contact. I'm looking for people to take this for a test drive very soon.
Perfect. That's great. Well, look, we always ask our guests at the end, if someone wants to reach out to you, how can they do it? So we want you to be able to answer that question, but also let folks know how they can get a copy of your book.
You can get a copy of my book, paperback, at either my website, which is www.jasonkae.com, or on Amazon. If you want a digital copy for a Kindle or the audio version, you can go to Amazon for those. And I got to say, the audio version is fantastic. I hired an actor out of LA to read it. She is amazing. So check out that for sure. And then if you want to contact me, you can do it through my website or through LinkedIn. I'm real active on LinkedIn. So if you send me a message through that, I'll definitely get it within a day or so.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on our Decoding Multifamily show, Jason and Suzanne. We're going to be back again soon with another great guest to talk about it. But until that time, you can check us out as well as all the other podcasts on the Multifamily Media Network by going to multifamilymedianetwork.com. So until then, we'll see you soon.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Decoding Multifamily video podcast, and please tune in to future episodes. If you would like to subscribe to our weekly newsletter or discuss being a podcast guest on Decoding Multifamily, please go to multifamilymedianetwork.com. Thank you for watching Decoding Multifamily.